it's always the same thing. I think it's always just be you. I mean, there's only so many ways you can say something that's super institutional. So it's just better to be personal and go with your character and what you're actually interested in and how that comes out through your work. It's just to be authentic, really.
So for 3 tips for EU communicators to make an impact on Twitter, I would say something interesting. I mean, it sounds really basic, but I think when I see Twitter communications, particularly from companies or politicians, it's those communication strategies that really want to play it safe and put out tweets that don't really say anything, that don't get a lot of traction. But of course, it is a difficult balance. It takes a kind of more skill to be able to tweet something interesting without being offensive or controversial. So it is a harder job, and that's why it's good for companies to hire social media experts who can really navigate that to make a tweet interesting enough for people to engage with it, but not so interesting that it offends a lot of people.
Look, Twitter still is the platform for what's happening. And I sort of take that to mean that it's a platform built around what's newsy. And newsiness is maybe a good place to start here. One of the harder-nosed definitions of news goes something like this. It's what someone wants suppressed while everything else is just advertising. Other definitions are available, of course. And there's a softer one that goes something like this. News is something that somebody somewhere doesn't know about yet, and that's maybe the one to bear in mind here. What I mean is that no matter what kind of EU communicator you are, above all, be fresh and be timely. Announce new things, and all the more so if those new things connect to ongoing social or political events. Yes, try and inspire people with your tweets. By all means, promote the causes close to your heart. And do share tweets and links and respond to content from organizations other than your own. But also be as relevant and as pegged to the news cycle as you possibly can be.
3 tips for making an impact on Twitter. Tempted to go with the 3 R's as described by The Fall. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Not everybody's seeing everything that you do. Most people are not on Twitter all the time. So you actually need to have certain themes that you're repeating over and over again in different forms, in different ways to spark that discussion, to get the message over. I think as well, engage with the people who come back to you. Seek to explain further what you're doing. Try to make the complex understandable, but don't lose sight of the fact that many modern policy challenges are complex. And maybe a little bit of yourself in there as well. So put a little bit about your football team or music, or we always like to see the pet pictures. I think, well, most people do anyway. So a little bit of your personality in there as well, but also a lot of repetition.
Firstly, from a professional point of view, as a journalist, first reason is getting my work out there, getting people to read it, drawing attention to it, whether or not that is sharing links to articles that have been published, or doing threads on issues or news stories that either I haven't been commissioned to write something about, or something I wish to use, a thread to draw attention to an article. I find it's quite effective to either break down an issue that people haven't heard about before, or basically speak to the people who already know about this but would like to know the current state of play of it. And of course, having a blue tick on Twitter, I have found has actually increased my visibility in that regard. So it's not just an ego thing, although I'm sure that is a big part of it as well. It is actually beneficial from a professional point of view. Second reason I use social media is it's really as a creative outlet. As a freelance journalist, not everything that I want to write a story about gets commissioned, so it is a great way to actually get it out, whether or not it's through some stupid meme that people might find funny, or you may have seen my UCO, but it's threads, which I like to at least weave a little strand of, satire or parody or current affairs through. It's not just, this person looks like Severus Snape or whatever, although that is sometimes the case. So creativity, especially during lockdown, pandemics, coronavirus and whatnot, Twitter was actually a nice way to sort of get that creativity out and not let it fester about in my insides through want of no other way to actually do it. So those are the 2 reasons I use social media. In terms of tips for anybody who might be watching this video right now, I guess I could only advise people in a similar position or sector to myself, media, journalism, rather than anything else. Probably it would be something along the lines of pick your target audience quite well when you're crafting your tweet or your post or whatever. Like I said before, if you're talking to people who already know something about this issue, then don't water things down, don't dilute the message or the information that you're putting out there. People already know it. You only have a certain amount of characters or space or attention span to deal with. So give people some credit and talk about the issue as if they've already read a few textbooks about it or whatever. Or if you're being more broad and you want to introduce people to this new issue, then spell it out quite nicely, be simple. Use emojis, I guess. I've used them quite, I think, effectively in the past for explaining different energy and climate topics that people might not have heard about before, whether it's climate, carbon markets, or taxonomy or something like that. You want to make what is potentially a very complex subject